Is getting rich a matter of luck? Is it about talent, destiny, or being in the right place at the right time? For centuries, humanity has wrestled with these questions, watching some individuals ascend to extraordinary wealth while others labor endlessly with nothing to show for their efforts. We have constructed elaborate mythologies around success, stories of fortunate breaks, divine favor, and mysterious forces that bestow prosperity upon the chosen few. But what if everything you have been taught about wealth is fundamentally wrong? What if the difference between poverty and riches has nothing to do with chance and everything to do with precision? Over 100 years ago, a man named Wallace D. Wattles made a declaration so bold, so audacious, that it still reverberates through the corridors of human potential today. He stated with unwavering conviction that getting rich is an exact science, as precise as algebra, as predictable as arithmetic, not a gamble, not a hope, not a prayer whispered into the void, a science. And like any true science, it operates on laws that, when learned and obeyed, produce results with mathematical certainty. Failure, he proclaimed, becomes literally impossible when the law is followed correctly. Consider the weight of uncertainty that presses upon you every single day. You wake up wondering if today will be the day your efforts finally pay off, or if you are simply running on a treadmill that leads nowhere. You watch others succeed and secretly wonder what magic ingredient they possess that you lack. Is it connections? Is it charisma? Is it some invisible blessing bestowed upon them at birth? This uncertainty is not merely uncomfortable, it is corrosive. It eats away at your confidence, your motivation, and your very belief in the possibility of transformation. You work hard, you try different approaches, you read books and attend seminars, yet the gnawing fear remains. What if none of it matters? What if success is simply a cosmic lottery and your ticket was never meant to be drawn? We look at billionaires and titans of industry as if they were mythological creatures, anomalies of nature who operate by different rules than the rest of humanity. We dissect their biographies searching for the secret moment, the lucky break, the fortuitous meeting that changed everything. But Wallace Wattles saw something different. He observed that these individuals, whether they realized it or not, had simply executed a specific set of causes. They had combined certain mental and physical elements in precise proportions, and wealth emerged as the inevitable result. Like a chemical reaction that produces the same compound every time the correct elements are combined, their success was not miraculous, it was mechanical. The universe does not play favorites, it simply responds to those who understand and apply its operating principles. Here then is the promise that Wattles extends to you across the century, that separates his words from your ears. You can learn the master formula of this exact science. You can remove the variable of luck from your life forever. No longer must you hope for success while secretly fearing that hope is all you will ever have. No longer must you watch others prosper while wondering why the same doors remain closed to you. The knowledge exists, the formula has been tested, and by the end of this video it will be yours, not as a vague inspiration, but as a precise methodology you can apply with the same confidence a chemist applies when mixing compounds in a laboratory. What you are about to experience is not another motivational speech designed to make you feel good for an hour before reality reasserts itself. This is an initiation into a fundamentally different way of approaching your financial destiny. You are leaving behind the world of gambling, where you roll the dice and pray for favorable outcomes, and entering the world of engineering, where you design, construct, and manufacture your results according to proven specifications. This shift is not subtle, it is revolutionary. It changes everything about how you think, how you act, and how you interpret the events of your life. The gambler asks, "Will I be lucky today?" The engineer asks, "Have I followed the correct procedure?" One lives in anxiety, the other lives in certainty. Here is the pact I make with you today. In this video, you will learn the precise variables of the wealth equation as Wallace Wattles revealed them. You will discover the exact components that must be combined and the exact manner in which they must be combined so that your success becomes not a possibility, but a predictable, inevitable outcome. These are not abstract concepts to be pondered philosophically. They are operational instructions to be implemented practically. By the time you finish watching, you will possess a complete blueprint, a formula you can begin applying immediately in whatever circumstances you currently find yourself. The playing field of wealth is about to become level because science does not discriminate. But I must warn you of something crucial before we proceed. There is one variable in this equation that possesses a terrifying property. It acts as a zero. And as you know from basic mathematics, any number multiplied by 0 equals 0. It does not matter how large the other numbers are, how clear your vision, how persistent your action, how positive your attitude. If this single variable enters your equation, it nullifies everything else. The total result collapses to nothing. I will reveal this equation killer in part 4, and when you understand its nature, you will finally comprehend why so many people do everything apparently right and still fail. For now, if you are ready to embrace certainty, if you are prepared to trade wishful thinking for mathematical precision, I invite you to comment below the words, "I trust the math." Let these words be your declaration that you are done gambling with your future and ready to engineer your destiny. At the foundation of everything Wattles taught lies a single revolutionary premise, a statement so simple in its construction, yet so profound in its implications, that it has the power to restructure your entire understanding of how wealth operates in this universe. He wrote, with the calm assurance of a mathematician presenting a proven theorem, "There is a science of getting rich, and it is an exact science like algebra or arithmetic. There are certain laws which govern the process of acquiring riches. Once these laws are learned and obeyed by any man, he will get rich with mathematical certainty." Read those words again. Let them penetrate beyond the surface of casual comprehension into the deeper chambers of your understanding. This is not poetry, this is not metaphor, this is a declaration of universal principle. What does it mean for something to be an exact science? It means that the relationship between cause and effect is fixed, predictable, and repeatable. When you study algebra, you learn that certain operations performed on certain values will always produce certain results. 2 plus 2 equals 4. Not sometimes, not usually, not when conditions are favorable, but always, everywhere, without exception. The equation does not care about your feelings, your background, your education, or your beliefs about mathematics. It simply works according to its inherent logic. Wattles perceived that wealth operates according to this same immutable precision. There are inputs, there are processes, and there are outputs. Configure the inputs correctly, execute the processes faithfully, and the outputs manifest with the same reliability as any mathematical computation. This understanding immediately elevates you above the vast majority of humanity, who approach wealth as if it were governed by caprice, whim, or the arbitrary decisions of fate. They see the universe as a chaotic arena where random forces collide and occasionally, through no discernible pattern, deposit treasures in the laps of fortunate individuals. But chaos is merely complexity we have not yet decoded. What appears random to the untrained eye reveals itself as perfectly ordered to the one who possesses the key of understanding. The apparent randomness of wealth distribution is not evidence of cosmic injustice. It is evidence of cosmic law operating upon a population that mostly does not understand or obey that law. Consider how radically this shifts your position in relation to your financial future. If wealth were truly random, your efforts would be essentially meaningless. Noble perhaps, but ultimately irrelevant to the outcome. You might as well spend your time buying lottery tickets as building businesses. But if wealth is scientific, then your efforts become everything. Every thought you think, every action you take, every attitude you maintain becomes a variable in an equation that is constantly computing your results. You are not a passive recipient waiting for fortune to smile upon you. You are an active agent whose choices directly determine the mathematical output of your life. The universe, Wattles understood, operates on law rather than caprice. This is not a minor philosophical distinction. It is the foundation upon which all possibility of deliberate success rests. A universe of caprice would be a universe where nothing you do matters, where the connection between effort and result is severed, where you are forever at the mercy of forces beyond your comprehension or influence. But a universe of law is a universe of empowerment. It tells you that there are rules to the game, and once you learn those rules, you can play with confidence. It tells you that the same causes will always produce the same effects, which means that if you can identify the causes of wealth, you can deliberately generate its effects. This principle extends far beyond money into every domain of existence. The law of gravity does not suspend itself because you are having a bad day. The laws of chemistry do not rearrange themselves because you failed to study for your exam. The laws of physics do not make exceptions for those who do not believe in them. Natural law is characterized by absolute consistency. It operates the same way for everyone, at all times, in all places. And this, far from being oppressive, is the very condition of freedom. Imagine trying to navigate a world where gravity worked sometimes and not others, where water occasionally decided to flow uphill, where fire sometimes cooled instead of burned. Such a world would be impossible to master, impossible to predict, impossible to live in with any sense of security or purpose. Wattles recognized that the laws governing wealth are of the same nature as the laws governing physical phenomena. They are not suggestions or guidelines or best practices. They are operational principles woven into the fabric of reality itself. Cause A always produces effect B. This is not true most of the time. It is true all of the time. It is not true for some people. It is true for all people. The apparent exceptions we observe are not violations of the law, but misunderstandings of it. When someone does everything apparently right and still fails, we assume the law has failed, but the law never fails. What failed was our perception of what they actually did versus what they should have done. This brings us to a crucial insight. Your current financial condition, whatever it may be, is not an accident. It is not the result of bad luck, unfortunate circumstances, or cosmic conspiracy against you. It is the mathematical output of causes you have set in motion, many of them unconsciously, many of them inherited from conditioning you never chose, but causes nonetheless. This may sound harsh to ears accustomed to finding comfort in blame and victimhood, but it is actually the most liberating truth you will ever encounter, because if your current condition is the result of causes, then a different condition can be produced by different causes. You are not stuck. You are not doomed. You are simply operating with an incomplete or incorrect formula, and formulas can be corrected. The beauty of an exact science is that it can be taught. You do not need to be born with special gifts to learn algebra. You simply need to study its principles and practice its operations. You do not need genetic advantages to understand chemistry. You simply need to learn which elements combine in which ways to produce which compounds. And you do not need privileged circumstances to master the science of getting rich. You simply need to learn the laws that govern the process and apply them with precision. Wattles was emphatic on this point. The science works for anyone who learns and obeys it. Not for the talented, not for the lucky, not for those born into the right families, for anyone. What separates those who get rich from those who remain poor is not a difference in worthiness, but a difference in methodology. The rich, whether they articulate it this way or not, have stumbled upon or deliberately learned the correct formula. They think in certain ways, they act in certain ways, and wealth flows to them as the inevitable result. The poor, despite often working harder and longer, employ an incorrect formula. Their inputs do not match the requirements of the law, and so their outputs fail to include the wealth they desire. This is not moral judgment, it is mechanical analysis. A machine that receives the wrong inputs will produce the wrong outputs, regardless of how earnestly the operator wishes otherwise. Understanding this scientific framework transforms failure from a source of shame into a source of information. When an experiment does not produce the expected result, a scientist does not conclude that science is broken or that they are personally unworthy of scientific success. They examine their procedure, identify the deviation from correct protocol, make adjustments and run the experiment again. This is precisely how you must approach your financial life. Every setback, every disappointment, every goal that remains unreached is simply data indicating that somewhere in your equation, a variable is misconfigured. Find it, fix it, and watch the output change. The laws Wattles speaks of are not hidden in ancient texts, accessible only to the initiated few. They are not locked away in the minds of billionaires who guard their secrets jealously. They are present in this very teaching, waiting to be understood and applied. The universe is not stingy with its principles. It broadcasts them constantly to anyone willing to observe and listen. Your role is not to beg for special access, but to open your eyes to what has been available all along. The science of getting rich is exact, it is knowable, and it is learnable. The only question remaining is whether you will study and obey it. Let this understanding settle into the deepest part of your being. You are not at the mercy of chance. You are not waiting for luck to visit you. You are standing in a universe of perfect order, where every cause produces its corresponding effect with unfailing precision. The wealth you desire is not hiding from you. It is waiting for you to configure the correct inputs. The formula exists. The laws operate continuously. Mathematical certainty awaits those who align themselves with the principles. This is not hope. This is science. And science, when properly applied, never fails. To grasp the full implications of Wattles' teaching, let us transport ourselves into a chemistry laboratory, a place where the relationship between cause and effect is demonstrated with perfect clarity every single day. Imagine standing before a workbench, surrounded by beakers and tubes and precisely measured substances. You have before you two elements, hydrogen and oxygen. These are your raw materials, and you have been given a specific task: create water. Now, what must you do to accomplish this task? You must combine these elements in the correct proportions, 2 parts hydrogen to 1 part oxygen, under the appropriate conditions. When you do this, when you follow the protocol exactly, what happens? Water emerges, not wine, not stone, not an empty beaker mocking your efforts. Water, every single time, without exception, regardless of who performs the experiment. This is not magic, this is not miracle, this is law. The chemical reaction that produces water from hydrogen and oxygen does not consult a list of approved individuals before proceeding. It does not check whether you have suffered enough, worked hard enough, or wished fervently enough. It does not care about your past failures, or your family history, or your level of education. It simply responds to the configuration of elements you have assembled. Provide the correct inputs, follow the correct process, and the output manifests with mechanical reliability. This is the nature of law. It operates with perfect consistency, completely indifferent to everything except the conditions that trigger it. Wallace Wattles perceived that wealth operates according to this identical principle. The specific elements are different. They are mental and behavioral rather than chemical. But the operational logic is exactly the same. There are certain inputs that, when combined in certain ways, produce wealth as their inevitable output. These inputs are not secret or arbitrary. They are discoverable and reproducible. Wattles identified them with precision, thinking in a certain way and acting in a certain way. When these two elements are combined correctly, wealth emerges not as a possibility, but as a necessity. The reaction completes itself according to law. Notice what is absent from this formula: moral qualification. The chemistry of water does not distinguish between saints and sinners. If a virtuous person combines hydrogen and oxygen correctly, they get water. If a wicked person combines them correctly, they also get water. The law is not a reward system, it is an operational principle. This observation extends directly to the science of wealth. Wattles noted that the certain way works for everyone who employs it, regardless of their moral character. We observe wealthy people who are generous and wealthy people who are selfish, wealthy people who are honest and wealthy people who are deceptive. Wealth itself is simply the output of certain causes. What one does with that wealth is a separate question entirely. This mechanistic view may initially disturb those who have been taught that the universe runs on karmic justice, that good things come to good people and bad things come to bad people. But observation contradicts this comfortable belief. Good people suffer unjustly, wicked people prosper abundantly. If we insist on seeing the universe as a moral scorekeeper, we will be forced into endless cognitive contortions to explain these apparent injustices. But if we see the universe as a system of natural law, impersonal, consistent, and responsive, only to correct application, then everything makes sense. The good person who fails to combine the elements of wealth correctly remains poor, despite their virtue. The bad person who happens to combine them correctly becomes rich despite their vice. This understanding does not diminish morality, it simply separates it from mechanics. You may choose to be a good person because goodness has its own intrinsic value, but do not expect goodness alone to make you rich. You must learn and apply the specific laws of wealth if you want wealth as your outcome. Similarly, you may observe wicked people prospering and conclude that the universe is unjust, but the universe is not dispensing justice through wealth distribution. It is simply responding to whoever meets the conditions of the law. This clarity is essential because it frees you from waiting for cosmic reward. You do not need to earn wealth through suffering or prove your worthiness through virtue. You need to learn the formula and apply it. The chemical laboratory teaches us another crucial lesson. Precision matters. If you combine hydrogen and oxygen in the wrong proportions, you do not get inferior water. You get a different substance entirely, or perhaps an explosion. The margin for error in chemical reactions is often very small, and the consequences of deviation can be dramatic. Wattles taught that the science of getting rich demands similar precision. It is not enough to think positive thoughts occasionally while acting efficiently some of the time. The elements must be combined in the correct proportions with consistent application. Partial adherence to the formula produces partial results at best and complete failure at worst. Consider what happens when an aspiring chemist decides to improvise, to substitute one element for another, to ignore the specified proportions, to skip steps in the procedure because they seem unnecessary. The experiment fails, and the failure is not mysterious or unfair. It is the logical consequence of deviation from protocol. How often do people approach wealth with exactly this attitude? They learn a principle and decide to modify it according to their preferences. They combine elements of one system with elements of another, creating an incoherent mixture that produces nothing. They follow the formula when it is convenient and abandon it when it becomes difficult. Then they conclude that the science does not work, when in fact they never actually applied it. Wattles was insistent that the certain way must be followed exclusively and completely. You cannot mix his method with opposing approaches and expect coherent results. You cannot think in the certain way while acting in an uncertain way. You cannot hold a clear vision while simultaneously entertaining doubts about its realization. Every element of the formula must be present in the correct proportion, applied with consistency. This is not rigidity for its own sake, it is the requirement of law. The chemistry of wealth, like the chemistry of water, operates only when its conditions are met precisely. The beautiful implication of this chemical analogy is that failure becomes diagnostic rather than definitive. When an experiment fails, a skilled chemist does not throw up their hands in despair or conclude that chemistry itself is flawed. They review the procedure step by step, identify where deviation occurred, correct the error, and run the experiment again. This troubleshooting approach is exactly what Wattles prescribes for the science of wealth. When your results do not match your expectations, do not conclude that you are doomed or that the universe is against you. Instead, examine your formula. Were you thinking in the certain way consistently? Were you acting efficiently in every transaction? Were faith and gratitude present, or had doubt contaminated your mental mixture? Identify the missing or corrupted element, restore the correct configuration, and watch the result change. This scientific detachment is liberating precisely because it removes the personal sting from failure. You are not a failure. Your procedure failed. You are not unworthy. Your formula was incomplete. The distinction matters enormously for your psychological well-being and your practical effectiveness. A person who internalizes failure as identity evidence becomes progressively less capable of success. They approach each new attempt already defeated by the weight of previous disappointments. But a person who externalizes failure as procedural information maintains their confidence and learns from each iteration. The first person is trapped in a downward spiral. The second is engaged in an upward process of refinement. Wattles' chemical framework also explains why wealth is not a zero-sum game, where one person's gain must come from another's loss. In chemistry, when you create water, you do not deprive anyone else of water. You have simply combined elements that were available to everyone into a compound that you now possess. Similarly, when you create wealth through the certain way, you are not taking from a fixed pool that diminishes with each withdrawal. You are combining mental and physical elements that exist in infinite supply, thought, creativity, service, value creation, into a compound called wealth. There is no limit to how much water can be created if sufficient hydrogen and oxygen exist. There is no limit to how much wealth can be created if sufficient thought and action are properly combined. This understanding demolishes the scarcity mindset that keeps so many people trapped in poverty consciousness. They believe, often unconsciously, that there is only so much wealth to go around, and that their enrichment necessarily means someone else's impoverishment. This belief creates guilt around the pursuit of wealth and competition-based approaches that violate the principles of the certain way. But when you see wealth as a created compound rather than a distributed resource, guilt dissolves and competition becomes irrelevant. You are not fighting others for a limited supply. You are creating new supply through the alchemy of correct thought and action. Let this chemical metaphor become your lens for viewing financial reality. When you look at wealthy individuals, do not see lucky people who won a random lottery. See successful experimenters who, knowingly or unknowingly, combined the correct elements in the correct proportions. When you look at your own financial situation, do not see a verdict on your worth. See the output of a formula you have been running, perhaps unconsciously, perhaps incorrectly. When you contemplate your financial future, do not see an uncertain hope dependent on factors beyond your control. See a laboratory where you are about to conduct an experiment whose outcome you can predict with confidence because you finally know the formula. The science is exact. The elements are identifiable. The procedure is learnable. The result is certain. This is not wishful thinking dressed in scientific language. This is operational truth that has been tested by countless individuals over more than a century since Wattles first articulated it. The chemistry of wealth awaits your application in the laboratory of your life. The question now becomes, how must you prepare yourself mentally to apply this exact science effectively? What internal condition must you cultivate before the formula can produce its intended results? Wattles provides a clear answer, and it may surprise you with its clinical precision. You must adopt a state of scientific detachment. This is not cold indifference to your circumstances, nor is it suppression of your natural desires for improvement. It is something far more powerful, a fundamental shift in how you perceive and relate to your own life. You must stop treating your existence as a drama and begin treating it as an experiment. This single adjustment changes everything. Consider how most people approach their financial struggles. They are immersed in the narrative of their lives, the heroes and villains, the injustices suffered, the hopes cherished, the fears that wake them at night. Every setback becomes a personal tragedy. Every obstacle becomes evidence of cosmic conspiracy. Every failure confirms the suspicion that they were not meant to succeed. This dramatic mode of experiencing life is emotionally exhausting and strategically disastrous. It keeps you reactive rather than proactive, victimized rather than empowered, entangled in interpretation when you should be focused on operation. The drama absorbs all your energy and leaves nothing for the precise work of applying the formula. Scientific detachment liberates you from this exhausting theater. When you look at your life as an experiment rather than a story, the emotional charge of circumstances diminishes dramatically. You are not the protagonist of a tragedy. You are the researcher conducting an investigation. Your current results are not indictments of your character. They are data points indicating how well your current procedure aligns with the law. This shift does not make you cold or unfeeling. It makes you effective. A surgeon who becomes emotionally overwhelmed by every patient cannot perform the precise operations that save lives. A scientist who takes every failed experiment as a personal insult cannot maintain the persistent inquiry that leads to breakthrough. Similarly, you cannot apply the science of getting rich while drowning in dramatic interpretation of your circumstances. If you are not currently rich, What does this mean from the perspective of scientific detachment? It does not mean you are cursed by fate or punished for past sins or excluded from prosperity by some arbitrary decree. It simply means that somewhere in your procedure, you have missed a step in the protocol. Perhaps your thinking has not been in the certain way consistently. Perhaps your actions have lacked the efficiency the formula requires. Perhaps faith has been absent or gratitude has been neglected. These are not moral failures, they are procedural errors. And procedural errors have a wonderful property that moral failures do not. They can be identified and corrected without existential crisis. This diagnostic approach requires rigorous honesty with yourself, not the harsh self-criticism that masquerades as honesty and really functions as self-sabotage, but genuine analytical assessment of what you have actually been doing versus what the formula requires. Most people have a highly distorted view of their own mental and behavioral patterns. They believe they think positively when their minds are actually saturated with doubt and fear. They believe they act efficiently when their actions are actually scattered and reactive. They believe they maintain faith when they actually oscillate wildly between confidence and despair. Scientific detachment means looking at yourself with the same objectivity you would apply to any experimental subject, noting what is actually present rather than what you wish were present. When you discover the deviation, and you will discover it because if the result is wrong, the procedure is wrong, you do not collapse into shame or despair. You simply fix the step and continue the experiment. This is exactly how progress happens in any scientific field. Every failed experiment teaches something. Every deviation from expected results points toward deeper understanding. Every error corrected brings you closer to the truth. The history of science is not a story of unbroken success, but of persistent failure, careful analysis, and incremental correction. The scientists who made the great breakthroughs were not those who never failed, but those who never stopped correcting. Apply this same methodology to your financial life. Your past failures are not badges of shame to be hidden or wounds to be nursed. They are experimental data to be analyzed. What were you thinking during those periods? How were you acting? What elements of the certain way were present and which were absent? This analysis is not navel-gazing or excuse-making. It is the practical work of identifying what must change for your future results to differ from your past results. Without this analysis, you are condemned to repeat the same errors indefinitely, wondering why different actions produce the same outcomes when in fact you are not taking different actions at all. You are taking the same actions with superficial variations. Scientific detachment also protects you from the wild emotional swings that sabotage most people's progress toward wealth. When good things happen, the dramatic person becomes euphoric, convinced that their fortune has finally turned, relaxing their discipline in the warm glow of success. When bad things happen, they plunge into despair, convinced that nothing they do matters, abandoning their efforts in the cold grip of hopelessness. Both reactions are enemies of the certain way. The euphoria leads to complacency, the despair leads to paralysis. Neither serves the steady, consistent application of the formula that produces results. The scientifically detached person responds differently. When good results appear, they note them as confirmation that the procedure is working and continue applying it with unchanged discipline. When bad results appear, they note them as indication that adjustment is needed and begin the diagnostic process without emotional collapse. Neither success nor failure derails them because neither is interpreted dramatically. Both are simply information to be integrated into the ongoing experiment. This equanimity is not stoic suppression of feeling, but practical wisdom about how to maintain effectiveness across varying circumstances. Think of the master chess player who loses a game. Does she tear up the board and vow never to play again? Does she conclude that chess is rigged against her, or that she lacks the genetic capacity for excellence? Of course not. She reviews the game move by move, identifies where she deviated from sound strategy, learns the lesson, and prepares for the next game with expanded understanding. Her confidence is not shaken because her confidence was never based on winning every game. It was based on her commitment to the process of improvement. Similarly, your confidence in the science of getting rich should not depend on never experiencing setbacks. It should rest on your understanding of the law and your commitment to applying it with increasing precision over time. This mental preparation, scientific detachment, is not merely a preliminary step to be completed before the real work begins. It is an ongoing discipline that must be maintained throughout your application of the certain way. The dramatic mode of living is deeply habituated in most people. It is the default setting installed by a lifetime of conditioning. You will find yourself slipping back into it repeatedly, especially when circumstances become challenging. The work is to notice when this happens and consciously return to the experimental mindset. Every time you make this return, you strengthen the new pattern. Eventually, scientific detachment becomes your default, and the dramatic interpretation of events becomes the exception rather than the rule. Cultivate this detachment starting now, before we proceed to the operational variables of the formula. Look at your current financial situation without the dramatic overlay. Strip away the story, the reasons and justifications, the villains and obstacles, the past injuries and future fears. See simply what is. Note it as data. Then prepare yourself to receive the formula that will change the data. You are not a tragic figure awaiting rescue. You are a scientist preparing to conduct the most important experiment of your life. The laboratory is ready. The materials are at hand. The procedure will now be revealed. Now we enter the operational heart of Wattles' teaching, the specific variables that compose the wealth formula. These are not vague principles to be contemplated, but precise elements to be implemented. Like the components of a chemical reaction, each must be present in correct proportion for the synthesis to occur. Miss one element, distort one proportion, and the reaction fails. Include all elements correctly configured, and the result becomes inevitable. Let us examine each variable with the precision it deserves. Variable 1. The specific thought, the input. Every creation, whether a cathedral or a business empire, begins as an idea in someone's mind. Before the physical structure exists, the mental structure must be established. This is not metaphor or mysticism, it is operational necessity. You cannot build what you have not first conceived. The builder who shows up at an empty lot without blueprints, without a clear image of what is to be constructed, will produce nothing but chaos and wasted materials. The entrepreneur who launches a business without a definite vision of what it will become, what it will offer, what it will achieve, will drift from one idea to another, never accumulating the momentum that transforms effort into wealth. Wattles is emphatic that the thought must be specific, not general. It is not enough to want to be rich. You must form a clear, detailed mental image of the riches you intend to create. What exactly do you want? Not vaguely more money, but precisely how much. Not vaguely a better life, but specifically what that life looks like, sounds like, feels like. The specificity matters because vague thoughts produce vague results. A blueprint that shows only a building rather than exact dimensions, materials and configurations cannot guide construction. Similarly, a mental image that contains only wealth rather than precise forms and amounts cannot guide the creative process. This specific thought must be held with two additional qualities that transform it from idle fantasy into operative force: faith and purpose. Faith is the unshakable conviction that your vision will materialize, not hope that it might, not wish that it could, but certain knowledge that it will. This faith is not blind credulity, it is logical confidence based on understanding the law. You have faith that water will form when hydrogen and oxygen combine because you understand the chemistry. You develop faith that wealth will form when the mental and physical elements combine because you understand the science Wattles reveals. Purpose is the steady intent to realize your vision, the commitment that holds the image in place against the distractions and discouragements that will inevitably arise. Without purpose, the image wavers and dissolves. With purpose, it remains fixed like a target that guides all your subsequent efforts. Think of this first variable as the blueprint in architecture, the recipe in cooking, the hypothesis in science. It is the organizing pattern around which all subsequent activity arranges itself. Without it, activity is random and unproductive. With it, activity becomes directed and cumulative, Many people skip this variable or treat it superficially, impatient to get to the real work of physical action. But Wattles understood that the mental work is the real work, the thinking in a certain way that must precede and accompany the acting in a certain way. Without the clear image held in faith and purpose, all the action in the world produces nothing but exhaustion. Variable 2. The efficient action, the process. Once the blueprint exists in your mind, construction must begin in the physical world. The vision, however clear and faith-filled, does not materialize by itself. It requires the medium of action to translate from mental image to tangible reality. But not just any action, efficient action. Wattles defined this precisely. You must act now, where you are, and every action must be successful in itself. This requires unpacking because it contradicts much of what passes for advice about achieving success. Acting now means not waiting for perfect conditions, complete knowledge, or ideal circumstances. The present moment, whatever its apparent limitations, is the only point at which action is possible. You cannot act in the past, it is gone. You cannot act in the future, it has not arrived. You can only act now. Every delay in the name of preparation, every postponement in the name of caution, is a failure to apply the formula. This does not mean acting recklessly without any thought. The first variable ensures that thought has preceded action. It means that once the vision is clear, you begin immediately with whatever resources and opportunities currently exist. Acting where you are means not requiring a change of circumstances before you begin. You do not need a different job, a different city, different connections, or different starting capital. You begin with what you have, where you are, right now. Wattles noted that many people fail to get rich because they spend their energy lamenting their current circumstances instead of working with them. The aspiring entrepreneur who says, "I would start my business if only I had capital," has already violated the formula. The certain way works from any starting point. It does not require favorable conditions because it creates favorable conditions through its own operation. Making every action efficient and successful in itself is perhaps the most demanding aspect of this variable. It means bringing full presence and competence to every act you perform, no matter how small or routine. Not just the big deals and major initiatives, but the daily interactions, the small transactions, the routine tasks. Each act either advances you toward your vision or retards you. There is no neutral. When you perform an act carelessly or incompletely, you have not just wasted time. You have introduced friction into the machinery of your progress. When you perform an act with full efficiency, you have not just completed a task, you have contributed to the momentum that makes wealth inevitable. This variable, efficient action, is where most aspiring practitioners of the certain way fail. They do the mental work of creating the vision. They feel the faith and purpose, and then their action is scattered, hesitant, incomplete, or simply absent. They wait for motivation that never comes sustainably. They act in bursts of enthusiasm, followed by periods of paralysis. They perform some acts efficiently and others carelessly. The formula does not tolerate this inconsistency. It requires that every act, without exception, be an expression of the vision held in faith and purpose. This is the sustained discipline that transforms the possible into the actual. Variable 3. The cumulative effect, the momentum. Here is where the mathematics of wealth reveal their most encouraging dimension. Success is not a single event to be achieved through one heroic effort. It is a cumulative result, built through the stacking of successful acts over time. One efficient action plus another efficient action plus another creates momentum, a force that grows with each addition and eventually becomes unstoppable. You are not seeking a lottery win where one lucky ticket changes everything. You are constructing a mathematical certainty where enough correct operations inevitably produce the desired total. Consider how compound interest works in finance. A small amount deposited today, earning interest that itself earns interest, grows over time into a sum far exceeding the original deposits. The early stages seem unimpressive, the later stages become explosive. This is the mathematics of accumulation, and it applies to the science of getting rich in exactly the same way. Your early efforts may seem to produce minimal results. But if those efforts are genuinely efficient, if they are true applications of the certain way, they are building momentum that will eventually manifest as significant wealth. The mistake most people make is abandoning the formula during the early stages because the results do not seem proportional to the effort. Understanding cumulation transforms your relationship with time. Instead of impatience, wanting everything now and becoming discouraged when it does not appear, you develop the patience of a builder who knows that each brick brings the structure closer to completion. Instead of discouragement, when immediate results disappoint, you maintain confidence that every efficient act has contributed to a total that is growing even when invisible. Instead of the feast or famine mentality that looks for breakthrough moments, you cultivate the steady consistency that guarantees eventual success through mathematical accumulation. This cumulative perspective also explains why the certain way works, regardless of starting point. It does not matter if you begin with much or little, with advantages or disadvantages, with a running start or a standing stop. What matters is that you begin the accumulation and continue it persistently. Given enough time and consistent application, any starting point leads to wealth. The poor person applying the certain way consistently will eventually become wealthy, mathematically certainly, because correct operations cumulate toward their inevitable result. The head start enjoyed by others is ultimately irrelevant. It only affects timing, not destination. The three variables now stand clear before you. The specific thought held in faith and purpose, the efficient action performed now and where you are, and the cumulative momentum that builds toward inevitable wealth. These are the inputs to the formula. When they are present and correctly configured, the output cannot be anything other than riches. This is not hope. This is law. This is not optimism. This is mathematics. The formula has been revealed. Your work is to apply it with the precision it demands. Having received the variables of the wealth formula, you must now understand how to maintain and optimize your application over time. This is where the scientist's mindset becomes your permanent operating system. You have conducted your first experiment, you have formed the specific thought, acted efficiently, and begun building momentum. Now results appear, and you must know how to interpret them correctly. The scientist does not merely conduct experiments. She analyzes results, draws conclusions, adjusts procedures, and iterates toward perfection. You must do the same with your financial life. When you get a result, any result, your first task is analysis, not reaction. What exactly happened? What did you think, feel, and do in the period leading up to this result? How closely did your actual mental and physical operation align with the requirements of the certain way? These questions must be answered with rigorous honesty, not comfortable rationalization. If you got a good result, you need to understand precisely what you did right so you can repeat it deliberately. If you got a bad result, you need to understand precisely what you did wrong so you can correct it systematically. Either way, the result is information to be mined for understanding. If the result is good, if money has flowed, if opportunities have appeared, if your financial position has improved, resist the temptation to simply celebrate and relax. Celebration dissipates the focus that produced the success. Relaxation breaks the momentum that was building. Instead, note carefully what elements of the formula were active during the successful period. Was your vision particularly clear and specific? Was your faith especially strong and unwavering? Were your actions unusually efficient and consistent? Identify the success factors and commit to maintaining them at the same level or higher. The good result is not a destination, but a waypoint, confirmation that your current procedure is working and should be continued with unchanged discipline. If the result is bad, if money has not come, if obstacles have multiplied, if your financial position has stagnated or declined, resist equally the temptation to despair or abandon the formula. The bad result does not mean the science is flawed. It means your application was incomplete. Now begins the diagnostic work that transforms failure into education. Examine each variable systematically. Was your vision truly specific, or had it become vague and general? Were you holding it in faith, or had doubt crept in to corrupt the image? Was your action genuinely efficient, or had you fallen into the trap of busyness that produces no real progress? Were you acting now and where you are, or had you been waiting for conditions to improve? Often you will find that doubt, the equation killer we will examine in detail shortly, had infiltrated your consciousness without your full awareness. Doubt is subtle. It does not announce itself loudly but whispers quietly at the edges of thought. You may believe you are maintaining faith while a part of your mind rehearses failure scenarios. You may think you are holding your vision clearly while another part wonders if such things are really possible for someone like you. These whispers are enough to corrupt the formula. The scientist's task is to detect them and eliminate them, restoring the purity of the mental mixture. Sometimes the missing element will be in the action variable rather than the mental one. You have been thinking correctly but not acting correspondingly. The vision is clear in your mind, but your behavior in the world does not reflect it. You have not been making every action efficient. You have been performing some acts carelessly, some with full presence. You have not been acting now. You have been procrastinating, waiting, hesitating. These behavioral deviations are as fatal to the formula as mental ones, and they are often easier to correct once identified. Behavior can be changed immediately through simple decision. Mental states often require more sustained work. The scientist's mindset also requires tracking results over time to identify patterns. A single good result could be coincidence. A pattern of good results confirms correct procedure. A single bad result could be anomaly. A pattern of bad results reveals systematic error. Keep records, mental or written, of your financial outcomes and the mental and physical conditions that preceded them. Over time, correlations will emerge. You will discover which thoughts consistently precede prosperity and which precede stagnation. You will notice which actions reliably advance your position and which seem to produce nothing. This pattern recognition becomes increasingly valuable as your data set grows. Never forget that iteration is the path to mastery. The first application of the certain way may be imperfect, the second will be better, the 100th will be approaching precision. This is how all skill develops, through repeated practice with attention to feedback. The concert pianist did not sit down at the keyboard and play perfectly the first time. She practiced for years, noticing errors, making corrections, trying again. The master craftsman did not produce flawless work immediately. He apprenticed, failed, learned, improved. Your mastery of the science of getting rich follows the same trajectory. Each iteration brings you closer to the precise application that produces inevitable results. Adopt this mindset now and maintain it throughout your journey. You are not a passive recipient of financial outcomes, but an active experimenter refining your procedure toward perfection. Every result teaches something. Every deviation from expected outcomes points toward necessary correction. Every day offers new opportunity to apply the formula with greater precision than the day before. The laboratory of your life is always open, the experiment is always running, and the scientist within you is always learning. This is the POST technique that ensures continuous improvement. Analyze, adjust, apply, repeat. We arrive now at the critical juncture of this teaching, the section that will explain why so many earnest, hard-working people fail to achieve the wealth they seek despite apparent adherence to success principles. Two fatal mistakes destroy the wealth formula more consistently than all other errors combined. Understanding them is not optional for your success, it is absolutely essential. Without this understanding, you may do everything else correctly and still produce nothing. With this understanding, you possess the knowledge to protect your formula from corruption. Mistake number 1, the variable of doubt, the zero. Remember the promise I made at the beginning of this video, that there is one variable acting as a zero in the equation capable of nullifying everything else. The time has come to reveal it fully. That variable is doubt. This is not an emotional assessment. This is mathematical reality. Consider the formula. Vision plus action multiplied by doubt equals 0. It does not matter how magnificent your vision, how tireless your action, how many other elements you have configured correctly. If doubt enters the equation as a multiplier, the total product collapses to nothing. This is not punishment for lack of faith. It is mechanical consequence of contaminated input. Why does doubt possess this devastating power? because it corrupts both primary variables simultaneously. First, doubt interferes with the transmission of thought. When you hold a specific vision but simultaneously doubt its realization, you are sending contradictory signals. The clear image of what you want is obscured by the cloudy image of it not happening. The faith that activates the creative process is diluted by the fear that undermines it. The mental broadcast that should be sharp and coherent becomes fuzzy and confused. Whatever mechanism translates thought into physical reality receives garbled instructions and cannot execute them properly. Second, doubt creates hesitation in action. The person who doubts does not act with the full efficiency the formula requires. They hold back, hedge their bets, prepare exit strategies, take half measures. Every action is contaminated by the mental reservation that says, "This probably won't work, so I shouldn't commit fully." This reservation is visible in the quality of the action, the lack of follow-through, the willingness to accept less than the best, the abandonment of effort at the first sign of difficulty. Efficient action requires total commitment. Doubt makes total commitment impossible. Understand the mathematics. Any positive number multiplied by 0 equals 0. It does not matter if the positive number is huge, millions or billions. The product is still 0. Similarly, it does not matter how much vision you have or how much action you take. If doubt is present as a multiplicative factor, the result is 0. This explains the tragic pattern we observe so often. People who work incredibly hard, who maintain positive attitudes, who do all the apparently right things, yet never seem to get ahead. They have everything except the one thing whose absence destroys everything else. You must eliminate doubt from your equation, not for spiritual or emotional reasons, but for logical and practical ones. This is not about positive thinking as an end in itself. It is about maintaining the integrity of a formula that cannot function with corrupted inputs. You would not add poison to a recipe and expect the food to be edible. You would not introduce a fatal bug into code and expect the program to run. Do not introduce doubt into the wealth formula and expect wealth to result. The elimination of doubt is as practical and necessary as the elimination of any other procedural error. How do you eliminate doubt? Through understanding. Doubt flourishes in ignorance, it withers in comprehension. When you truly understand that the science of getting rich is exact, that the law works with mechanical reliability, what is there to doubt? You do not doubt that fire will burn or that gravity will pull. These are known laws, and your certainty about them is complete. Develop the same certainty about the law of wealth. Study it, observe it, test it in small ways until your confidence is built on foundation of experience rather than blind hope. As your understanding deepens, doubt loses its purchase on your mind. Mistake number 2, changing the formula. The second fatal error is the tendency to mix Wattles' method with opposing approaches, to take elements of the certain way and combine them with elements of entirely different systems that operate on contradictory principles. This is the equivalent of a chemist mixing 2 different recipes and expecting the result to be the compound from the first recipe. It does not work. You get neither the first compound nor the second. You get an incoherent mess that serves no purpose. Consider the philosophy of competitive struggle that dominates much conventional thinking about wealth. This philosophy teaches that the world is a zero-sum game where your gain must come from someone else's loss, where you must fight and claw and defeat others to claim your share of limited resources. This approach directly contradicts the certain way, which teaches that wealth is created through the giving of more use value than you take in cash value, that competition is unnecessary because supply is unlimited, that the path to riches lies through contribution rather than conquest. These 2 philosophies cannot coexist in a coherent practice. If you try to apply the certain way, while simultaneously engaging in competitive struggle, you corrupt the formula. Or consider deceptive practices, manipulation, exploitation, dishonesty in dealings. Some people believe that such practices are necessary for financial success, that the ruthless prosper while the honest languish. This belief contradicts the certain way absolutely. Wattles taught that every transaction must leave all parties better off than before, that you must give more than you take, That integrity is not just morally superior, but practically essential to the formula. If you try to apply the certain way while engaging in deception, you do not get the benefits of either approach. The deception violates the principles of the certain way. The partial application of the certain way makes your deception less effective. You end up with the worst of both worlds. The requirement is exclusivity. You must commit to the certain way completely, abandoning contrary methods entirely. This does not mean becoming naive or ignoring practical realities. It means choosing a coherent system and applying it fully rather than creating an incoherent mixture of contradictory elements. When you bake a cake, you follow a recipe. You do not add ingredients from the cake recipe and the bread recipe and the soup recipe, hoping they will somehow combine into superior cake. You follow one recipe completely and get the result that recipe produces. Examine your current approach to wealth. Have you been mixing methods? Have you been trying to apply abundance principles while still operating from scarcity assumptions? Have you been attempting to create value while simultaneously looking for shortcuts that take value from others? Have you been holding visions of wealth while studying advice that emphasizes the difficulty and competitiveness of becoming wealthy? These mixtures guarantee failure. Choose the certain way and commit to it exclusively, or choose a different system entirely, but do not try to combine them. Having identified the fatal mistakes, let us now receive the assurance that Wattles offers to those who successfully avoid them. This is not vague encouragement, but a precise promise based on the operation of law. He wrote, "The men and women who practice the foregoing instructions will certainly get rich, and the riches they receive will be in exact proportion to the definiteness of their vision, the fixity of their purpose, the steadiness of their faith, and the depth of their gratitude." Read those words with the understanding you have now developed and feel their power. The men and women who practice the foregoing instructions will certainly get rich. Not possibly, not probably, not if conditions are favorable or luck is with them. Certainly, this certainty is not overconfident boasting, it is logical conclusion from understood premises. If the science is exact, if cause always produces effect, if the formula has been learned and will be applied correctly, then the result cannot fail to appear. The chemistry of wealth operates with the same reliability as the chemistry of water. Provide the correct inputs, and the output manifests. Wattles states this as certainty because it is certainty, because the law permits no other outcome, and the riches they receive will be in exact proportion to, note the precision here, not vaguely correlated with, not approximately related to, but in exact proportion to. This is quantitative language, mathematical language. It tells you that you can predict the magnitude of your results by assessing the quality of your inputs. Greater definiteness of vision produces greater riches. More fixed purpose produces more riches. Steadier faith produces more riches. Deeper gratitude produces more riches. These are not parallel benefits that happen to accompany wealth. They are causal factors that determine the amount of wealth produced. The definiteness of their vision. Here is confirmation of what was taught about the first variable. The more specific and clear your mental image, the more wealth you will receive. Vague visions of general prosperity produce meager results. Sharp, detailed images of exactly what you want produce corresponding abundance. This is not magic, but mechanics. The definite vision provides clear instructions to whatever process translates thought into reality. Definite instructions produce definite results. If you want more wealth, make your vision more definite. The fixity of their purpose. Purpose is the commitment that holds the vision in place through time and across circumstances. Fixed purpose does not waver when obstacles appear. It does not bend when temptations offer easier paths. It does not dissolve when the wait becomes long. This fixity directly determines results because the process of creation takes time, and a purpose that wavers interrupts that process repeatedly. Fixed purpose allows the process to complete. Every increase in the fixity of your purpose produces a corresponding increase in the wealth you receive. The steadiness of their faith. Faith is the conviction that your vision will materialize, and its steadiness is the consistency of that conviction over time. Unsteady faith, high today, low tomorrow, strong in success, weak in setback, corrupts the formula intermittently. Each dip in faith introduces doubt into the equation. nullifying whatever progress was being made. Steady faith maintains the integrity of the formula consistently, allowing the cumulative process to build without interruption. The steadier your faith, the more wealth you receive, not as reward for belief but as consequence of maintaining the conditions under which the law operates. The depth of their gratitude. Gratitude is an element we have not yet examined fully, but Wattles considers it essential to the certain way. Gratitude connects you mentally to the source of all wealth, maintaining the relationship through which creative power flows. It also prevents the dissatisfaction and desire for more that undermines appreciation of what you have and are creating. Shallow gratitude, perfunctory thanks without real feeling, produces shallow results. Deep gratitude, genuine, heartfelt appreciation that pervades your consciousness, produces deep results, meaning substantial wealth. This promise from Wattles serves as both assurance and diagnostic tool. It assures you that success is certain if you apply the formula correctly. It also allows you to diagnose why your results may be less than desired by examining each of the 4 factors. Is your vision as definite as it could be? Is your purpose as fixed as it could be? Is your faith as steady as it could be? Is your gratitude as deep as it could be? Whatever factor is weakest is limiting your results. Strengthen that factor and watch your results increase proportionally. You now possess the complete formula with its variables identified, its common errors exposed, and its promise articulated. This is the master's teaching distilled to its essence. The theoretical foundation has been laid. What remains is validation through example and transformation through application. To anchor this understanding in the reality of your contemporary experience, let us connect Wattles' 100-year-old teaching to a phenomenon you interact with daily, the algorithm. Consider the YouTube algorithm that governs what videos appear before viewers. It is a set of rules. Complex, yes, but ultimately rules that determine outcomes based on inputs. If a video provides certain signals, high click-through rate, strong audience retention, engagement metrics, the algorithm responds by promoting that video to more viewers. This is not a person making subjective judgments. This is code executing instructions. Provide the specified inputs and the specified outputs follow every single time without exception. Now observe, no video creator begs the algorithm for favorable treatment. No one prays to it, hoping to be randomly selected for promotion. Those who succeed understand the rules and provide what the rules require. They optimize their thumbnails for click-through rate. They structure their content for retention. They encourage engagement to boost signals. They do not hope the algorithm will like them. They give it what it needs to promote them. This is entirely impersonal, entirely mechanical, entirely predictable once the rules are understood. The algorithm does not care about the creator's background, beliefs, or personal qualities. It cares only about whether the inputs match its requirements. Wattles taught that the universal mind, whatever you conceive that to be, operates on what we might call cosmic algorithms. These are the laws governing the creation and distribution of wealth, as impersonal and mechanical as any computer code. When you input the certain way, the specific thought held in faith and purpose, combined with efficient action, the algorithm of reality outputs wealth. It cannot do otherwise any more than the YouTube algorithm can fail to promote a video that meets all its criteria. The output follows from the input as surely as effect follows cause, as certainly as water follows from hydrogen and oxygen. This technological analogy should dissolve any remaining mysticism from your understanding. You are not dealing with a capricious deity who might or might not answer your prayers depending on unfathomable whims. You are not trying to attract luck or win cosmic favoritism. You are interfacing with a system that operates according to fixed rules. Learn the rules. Provide what the rules require. Receive what the rules guarantee. This is the only formula, and it is exact. Consider how liberating this understanding becomes when applied to your financial life. You no longer need to wonder whether you are worthy of wealth. The algorithm does not check worthiness. You no longer need to fear that others are somehow favored over you. The algorithm does not play favorites. You no longer need to hope that fortune will smile on you. The algorithm does not operate by fortune. All you need to do is provide the correct inputs. Study what the algorithm requires. Configure your thoughts and actions to match, and accept the output that must follow. The successful YouTube creator does not leave their success to chance. They research, test, analyze, and optimize. They study what works and implement it systematically. They do not complain that the algorithm is unfair or wish that it worked differently. They accept its nature and align their efforts with its requirements. This is exactly the approach Wattles prescribes for wealth. Study the law, test it, analyze your results, optimize your application. Do not waste energy wishing the universe worked differently. Accept its operational principles and align yourself with them. This connection between ancient wisdom and modern technology suggests something profound. The principles Wattles articulated are not cultural artifacts of a bygone era, but timeless truths about how reality operates. The language may change. We now speak of algorithms and code rather than laws and spirit, but the underlying mechanics remain identical. Input determines output. Cause produces effect. Configuration precedes result. These relationships held true in 1910, when Wattles wrote, "They hold true today, and they will hold true for as long as the universe maintains its orderly nature." Think about how you approach technology compared to how you approach your financial life. With technology, you assume that devices work according to rules, and you learn to operate them accordingly. You do not pray for your smartphone to function. You learn which buttons to press. You do not hope your car will start. You turn the key according to designed procedure. Yet when it comes to wealth, which operates on equally fixed principles, many people abandon this practical approach and resort to hope, prayer, and luck. Wattles invites you to bring the same operational intelligence to wealth that you bring to technology. Learn the interface, master the inputs, trust the outputs. The cosmic algorithm is always running, always processing inputs, always generating corresponding outputs. It processes the inputs of the wealthy and generates wealth. It processes the inputs of the poor and generates poverty. The algorithm itself is neutral. It simply does what algorithms do. The question is not whether the algorithm works, but whether you are providing the inputs that produce the outputs you want. Right now, in this moment, the algorithm is processing your thoughts and actions and computing results. What are you feeding it? Let us illustrate this mathematical certainty through a story that strips away all complexity and reveals the bare mechanics of the law. Imagine two farmers, neighbors who own adjacent plots of similar soil in a region blessed with adequate rainfall. Both desire the same outcome, an abundant harvest that will sustain their families and provide surplus for trade. But they approach this desire very differently. The first farmer holds hope in his heart. He prays daily for a bountiful crop. He visits his plot regularly, walking the empty furrows, visualizing sheaves of grain waving in the wind. He speaks positively about his future harvest to anyone who will listen. He believes, truly believes, that if his faith is strong enough, the universe will provide. But here is what he does not do. He does not study the science of agriculture. He does not prepare his soil with proper nutrients and cultivation. He plants seeds, yes, but randomly, without attention to depth, spacing, or timing. He waters when he remembers to water, which is sporadically. He addresses weeds and pests only when they become obvious problems, and then with half-hearted effort. His approach is fundamentally one of hope and luck, believing that his positive attitude should be sufficient to guarantee positive results. The second farmer operates differently. She studies agriculture with the seriousness of a scientist studying chemistry. She analyzes her soil to determine exactly what amendments it needs. She prepares the ground according to proven methods: proper tilling, adequate composting, careful drainage. She selects seeds suited to her specific conditions and plants them at the depth and spacing that research indicates optimal. She creates a watering schedule based on the needs of her crops and follows it with religious consistency. She monitors for pests and diseases, intervening early with appropriate remedies. Her approach is fundamentally one of science and system, believing that correct causes will produce correct effects. Now, which farmer receives the harvest? The question answers itself. The second farmer's rows burst with healthy plants that yield abundant grain. The first farmer's plot produces a meager, patchy crop that barely justifies the minimal effort invested. And here is the crucial observation. This outcome has nothing to do with which farmer is a better person, which one prayed more sincerely, which one hoped more fervently, or which one was favored by cosmic forces. It has everything to do with which one understood and obeyed the laws governing agriculture. The laws of agriculture do not suspend themselves for farmers with positive attitudes who fail to plant properly. The laws do not punish farmers with negative attitudes who nonetheless follow correct procedure. The laws simply operate, consistently, impersonally, mechanically. Provide the inputs, proper soil preparation, correct planting, adequate watering, timely pest management, and receive the output, abundant harvest. Fail to provide the inputs and fail to receive the output. Hope is not an input the law recognizes. Prayer is not listed in the requirements. What is listed is the specific physical procedure that, when followed, produces food from seed. Wealth is a harvest, not a lottery. This single sentence, if truly understood, transforms everything about how you approach your financial life. A lottery is random distribution. Tickets are drawn and winners are selected without reference to their actions, qualities, or preparations. Day harvest is causal production. Inputs are assembled, processes are followed, and outputs emerge as inevitable consequences. If wealth were a lottery, your best strategy would be to buy many tickets and hope. But wealth is a harvest, and your only strategy is to learn and apply the law of cultivation. The lottery mindset is pervasive in how most people think about money. They look at wealthy individuals and see lucky winners, people whose numbers happen to come up. They buy literal lottery tickets, but they also buy metaphorical ones. Business ideas pursued without research, investments made without analysis, career moves based on wishful thinking. They believe at some level that success is about being in the right place at the right time, catching a lucky break, having one's ship come in. This belief makes them passive, waiting for fortune to find them rather than creating fortune through systematic action. The harvest mindset creates entirely different behavior. The person who understands wealth as harvest studies the conditions that produce it, just as the farmer studies conditions that produce crops. They prepare their soil, their skills, their network, their resources. They plant seeds, their ideas, their initiatives, their value creation. They water consistently, showing up daily, taking efficient action, maintaining the conditions for growth. They protect against pests, eliminating doubt, avoiding formula corruption, defending their process against contamination. They know that if they do these things correctly, harvest is not a hope, but a certainty. You can become the second farmer of this story. You can apply the science of wealth with the same methodical precision that the scientific farmer applies the science of agriculture. The laws are known, the procedures are clear, the outcome is guaranteed. What remains is simply your willingness to learn and your commitment to apply. The field awaits your cultivation. Stand back now and observe what has been revealed. The scattered insights have merged into a unified understanding, and that understanding carries a power capable of restructuring your entire relationship with wealth and possibility. What is this power? It is the complete elimination of fear. Fear thrives in uncertainty, the not knowing whether your efforts will produce results, whether you are on the right path, whether factors beyond your control will sabotage your progress. But when you understand that wealth is an exact science governed by inviolable law, what remains to fear? You do not fear that fire might not burn when you light a match. The law of combustion is known to you, and your confidence in that law is absolute. You do not fear that the sun might not rise tomorrow. The law of planetary motion is understood, and your certainty requires no hope. In exactly the same way, once you truly understand the law of wealth, once you grasp that specific causes produce specific effects with mathematical certainty, fear of financial failure becomes as irrational as fear that fire might freeze or that the sun might forget to appear. This fearlessness is not denial or false bravado. It is not pretending that challenges do not exist or that the path will be easy. It is the calm confidence of the engineer who knows the principles that govern their domain. Challenges will come, yes, but challenges are simply problems to be solved with the correct application of law. Obstacles will appear, certainly, but obstacles are simply invitations to refine technique and deepen understanding. None of these shake the fundamental certainty, because the certainty rests not on favorable circumstances, but on immutable principle. If wealth is a science, you do not need to worry about your destiny. Destiny implies a predetermined course beyond your control, a script written without your input that you must simply endure. But there is no financial destiny in a universe of law. There is only the result of causes you have set in motion, which means there is only the result of choices you have made and continue to make. You are not a leaf blown by winds of fate. You are an agent applying principles to produce intended outcomes. Your financial future is not written in stars, but calculated from inputs. Change the inputs, and you change the future. What liberates you here is the shift from hoping to knowing. Hope is the companion of uncertainty. You hope precisely because you do not know, but knowledge eliminates the need for hope. You do not hope water will form from hydrogen and oxygen. You know it will. You do not hope the algorithm will respond to correct inputs. You know it must. And now you need not hope that wealth will come from the certain way. You know it will. This knowledge is your fortress against fear, your armor against doubt, your foundation against the tremors of circumstance. Let this message of empowerment penetrate to the deepest level of your being, where old beliefs about worthiness and qualification have perhaps created barriers you did not know existed. Many people carry, often unconsciously, the belief that they must somehow earn the right to be wealthy, that they must prove themselves good enough, smart enough, deserving enough before the universe will release its abundance to them. This belief is both false and crippling. It is false because it misunderstands the nature of law. It is crippling because it creates a barrier that can never be overcome, since there is always a way to feel not quite worthy enough. Listen carefully. The law of gravity does not check your worthiness before keeping you on the ground. It does not assess your moral character, evaluate your past decisions, or judge whether you have suffered enough to deserve its service. It simply operates. Everyone, saint and sinner, wise and foolish, worthy and unworthy, is held to the earth by the same force operating according to the same principle. Gravity is not a reward for good behavior. It is an impersonal law that functions identically for all. The law of wealth operates with the same impersonal consistency. It does not check your worthiness before making you rich. It does not review your history to determine if you have earned the right to prosper. It does not consult your internal sense of deserving to decide whether you qualify for abundance. It simply responds to whoever provides the correct inputs. If a person thinks in the certain way and acts in the certain way, wealth comes, not as a reward for merit, but as a consequence of law. If a person fails to think and act in the certain way, wealth does not come, not as punishment for unworthiness, but as the absence of effects whose causes were not provided. This understanding frees you from the exhausting and futile quest to become worthy of wealth. You do not need to become a better person first. You do not need to heal all your psychological wounds. You do not need to achieve some arbitrary standard of virtue. You need to learn the law and apply it. Whatever you are right now, with all your imperfections and shortcomings and unresolved issues, you qualify for the science of getting rich. The formula does not ask who you are. It asks only what you do, what you think, and how you act. Can you feel the relief in this truth? The striving to prove yourself worthy is over. The anxiety about whether you measure up is dissolved. The question is no longer, am I good enough, but am I aligned enough? Alignment with the law is achievable by anyone willing to learn and apply. It requires no special background, no unusual gifts, no certification of merit. It requires understanding and action, both of which are available to you right now, exactly as you are. Stop asking whether you deserve wealth. Start asking whether your thoughts and actions align with the law of wealth. The first question leads to endless circular doubt. The second question leads to practical assessment and actionable adjustment. The first question has no satisfying answer. The second question has a clear answer, found through honest examination of your current procedure versus the required procedure. Shift your focus from worthiness to alignment and watch the barrier between you and abundance dissolve. You are not on trial for your right to be wealthy. You are not a defendant hoping for favorable judgment. You are a scientist applying laws that work equally for everyone. The same sun shines on all plants, but only those planted in soil and given water will grow. The same law of wealth operates for all people, but only those who provide the correct mental and physical inputs will become rich. You qualify for the sun simply by being a plant. You qualify for wealth simply by being human. Now grow. You stand at a threshold. Behind you lies the world of uncertainty, hope and luck, the world where financial outcomes seem random and effort appears disconnected from result. Before you lies the world of certainty, knowledge and law, the world where you engineer your prosperity with the precision of a scientist, conducting experiments whose outcomes are known in advance. The choice between these worlds is yours to make, and you make it not through dramatic declaration, but through daily action. I offer you a challenge, the Scientific Method Challenge. For the next 3 days, just 3 days, you will treat your life as a laboratory, and yourself as both researcher and subject. You will follow the instructions of the certain way with clinical precision. You will form a specific vision, detailed and definite, and hold it in your mind with unwavering faith and fixed purpose. You will act now, where you are, making every action efficient and successful in itself. You will maintain gratitude as the condition of your consciousness. And crucially, you will not allow emotion or doubt to interfere with the experiment. This is not a commitment to permanent transformation. That is too large for a challenge and invites resistance. This is a commitment to 3 days of strict experimentation. During these 3 days, you will observe the rules of the laboratory. No emotional reactivity to circumstances, no dramatic interpretation of events, no indulgence of doubt or fear. You will simply run the experiment and note the results. Can you give yourself 3 days of scientific discipline? 3 days to test whether the formula works as promised? At the end of 3 days, assess. What happened? What shifted? What results, internal or external, appeared? If the results are encouraging, extend the experiment. If the results are unclear, examine your procedure for deviation and run the experiment again with corrections. This iterative process, maintained over time, will prove to you through direct experience what words can only describe. The truth of the science will cease to be something you believe and become something you know. If you are ready to trade hope for certainty, if you are prepared to apply the infallible formula of wealth that Wallace D. Wattles revealed over a century ago, then subscribe to the Master's Legacy. Hit the notification bell so you do not miss the teachings that will continue to deepen your understanding and refine your practice. Comment below with your commitment to the 3-day challenge. Let your words be witness to your decision. You have received the science. You understand the formula. You know the variables, the fatal mistakes to avoid, the promise that awaits correct application. The chemistry of wealth has been revealed, and the laboratory of your life stands ready. The only remaining question is whether you will enter and begin the experiment. Welcome to the laboratory of creation. Welcome to the world of mathematical certainty. Welcome to the science of getting rich, exact, learnable, and infallible. The formula works, the law operates, your transformation awaits.